you can distribute your audio content to those channels. Then you create blog content, which then has SEO benefits. You can do email, you can do social media, you can do short form video clips. It can be shared with your guests, then they're promoting it. So so what I love about podcasting, why I got out of my traditional digital marketing into podcasting specifically, and then SaaS within that, is because there's so much leverage and you're also building relationships at the same time.
Welcome to the Thrive Podcast, where we dive deep into tech entrepreneurship and strategic growth. I'm your host, Bill Potter, founder of Thrive Advisors, and I'm here to guide tech-led founders through the maze of challenges on their journey to maximizing enterprise valuation. Whether it's scaling your team, navigating market shifts, or unlocking new revenue streams, we'll explore actionable strategies and insights to help you thrive in today's competitive landscape. Join me as we uncover the secrets to strategic growth and success in tech startups. Get ready for an exciting adventure with our special guest, Tony Guarnaccia. Tony's story is about facing challenges with determination and never giving up. Starting from small beginnings in business, Tony has seen the ups and downs of being an entrepreneur. Driven by his love for innovation and creating something amazing, Tony's journey has been full of successes and setbacks, but through it all, his determination has kept him going. And now he's a pro in digital marketing and a leader in SaaS and AI. So come along with us as we dive into Tony's incredible journey. We'll explore how innovation and opportunity come together, shaping the future of marketing. Don't miss out on this thrilling conversation that's bound to inspire, teach, and empower you. Tony, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
So, Tony, your journey into SaaS and the world of AI is fascinating. Please take us back and share what initially drew you to these fields.
Yeah, so from the very beginning, if you look at it, I think a lot of us start with impressions from our youth. And so when I was 12, my parents had a bakery, Italian bakery, actually. That's why the name's so hard to say. But they had a bakery, amazing bakers. Unfortunately, didn't know what they didn't know about growing a business. And so at the age of 12, lost everything. Lost the house, the car, and even had to give my dog to my oldest sister. And so that kind of always left the impression on me. It's like, okay, how do I fix this in a sense? So I go to school, go to college, learn entrepreneurship, and think, okay, I know all this. I got this down. It's like, oh, the school taught me everything I need. So launched one of the first online bakeries in existence. And so had a decent level of success. It got to the point where we were working with some Fortune 500 companies, did cakes. It was we did mailed cakes. We could take a photo, put a cake, mail it anywhere in the country. And so it became a promotional product. It was also a great gift because you give your kids away in college. You give them a picture of Fluffy, their cat or whatever, and say, hey, we miss you. And so we ended up doing cakes for Jennifer Lopez, Jay-Z, a lot of big names. And I thought, boy, I got this down. I am so cool. I'm in my 20s. I know everything. Unfortunately, I found out I didn't know what I didn't know about growing a business either, and lost everything for a second time. And we can explain why later. But essentially, newly married, baby on the way, 30 grand in debt, living in my sister's basement, which is exactly what happened when I was 12, too. I had to live in my other sister's basement because we lost everything. So once with my parents, once with me. And so I said, okay, clearly I don't know everything I need to know, but who does? And I was like, okay, why not find the best companies and figure out what they're doing? So I went on basically a decade-late journey to work with the best companies I could. So I ended up working with Ford and GM, Google, a bunch of really great companies. And then after about a decade, I left and started my own digital marketing company called Big Fish Results. From there, again, things are cranking, doing well. We all know about diversification. Unfortunately, I was diversified, but not enough for COVID. So lost 80% of our revenue overnight. Reason why was because I took my foot off the gas of growing the company. So I wasn't focused on sales of my agency or diversification because I was trying to build a SaaS company because I knew that was kind of the future. To me, the agency was the conduit to getting to something bigger. So I was working on a SaaS company and working on a training company. did a podcast book tour to promote a book I had coming out, which was going to support the SaaS and the training company. COVID hits, we lose 80% of our revenue overnight. So most sane people would say, okay, I'm going to quit and get a job. As an entrepreneur, what do? You double down. And so what I did was I said, okay, what's hot right now? I said, wow, podcasting's pretty hot. Why not because originally my SaaS was around marketing, messaging, and things like that, and strategic planning. So I repositioned that for podcasting and then closed the agency down and then focused all in on SaaS. Now, one of the things the SaaS had was frameworks for your messaging. And what I didn't expect at the time, because I'd worked on this like almost a decade ago, that these frameworks would really become prompts for AI. So then over time, in the past couple of years, I took what I had been working on for literally a decade, those frameworks became prompts, and then I incorporated AI into my podcasting software. So kind of a long story, but that's kind of how I got here.
That's exciting.
Yeah, thank you.
It's exciting. Well, I had a similar experience. I came up through the ranks of corporate. I was on Wall Street. I'd become a chief financial officer, but I, like you, have the heart of an entrepreneur. And unlike you, though, everyone in my extended family were lawyers, doctors, CPAs, so I had no training as to what it would take. And so I became a corporate officer for a number of years. But when I first started my company, it was a strategic growth company because of what I had learned along the way. But what was interesting is as you pivoted, I pivoted too because I came across a technology company, a SaaS type company, and I thought, well, this is interesting. This is going to be a game changer for my existing clients. And so I acquired it and grew it into my existing client base to grow them more quickly towards sale, and it worked. But then I was thinking, I should be selling this to the Fortune 500. And that's, we grew it and had a very successful exit. But, with regard to SaaS and AI, since we're both in that field, it's revolutionized marketing strategies in recent years. From your perspective, how do you envision these technologies transforming traditional marketing approaches, and, what opportunities do they present for businesses today?
Yeah, so basically I'm playing in two areas. So what I believe is going to happen is as AI becomes more ubiquitous, that you're going to get more and more commoditized. So there's a lot more content, easier to create, means anyone can do it. Kind of the corollary to that is like, how do you stand out, right? And so at the end of the day, I think it comes down to your influence. And so how do you grow your influence? And also, how do you build your relationships? So the thing that's special about podcasting is the only channel where you're simultaneously building your visibility because you're getting exposure to someone else's audience. You're also able to grow your authority because there's a transference authority from the host or from the guest and vice versa. You're building relationships with people, and then you're also able to generate income from those interviews. And so it's the only channel that does all that because you can multi-purpose the content. So you have your podcast, you can use the AI to multi-purpose the content, but you're also authentic because you can really make up a lot of content with blogs. You can automatically do all that with AI. But with podcasting, it's really hard to fake an interview like we have here. So people know it's authentic and you're building those relationships. So that's really where I see it going, but even more. So people, if they're smart, they're going to invest in AI, so they're positioned for the future, but they're also going to be investing in growing their influence and building their relationships.
Terrific. Podcasting, I agree, has emerged as a powerful marketing tool in recent years. What do you think are the key advantages in business, and how can, when you say authentic and whatnot, how can entrepreneurs leverage this to enhance their marketing efforts? For example, our audience is typically tech-led founders, oftentimes B2B. What would your advice be to them as they're beginning their marketing journey?
So for incorporating podcasting specifically?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think a good place is to start is by being a guest. That way you're starting to build those connections and getting in front of the right people. I think as you start your podcast, you want to make sure you have a plan of what you want to do. We mentioned this before we even started the interview, like what's the end in mind?
Right.
So what's your goal and what do you want to accomplish it? And then you want to make sure your guests align with that. So if you have an interview-based show, a lot of people are just like, oh, I'm going to get whatever guests. Wouldn't it make more sense to have a guest that aligns with where you want to go? So if your goal is to do joint ventures, maybe you find guests that have audiences where you can joint venture with each other. If your goal is to maybe monetize the guest, because a lot of times you can, maybe it's a frequent model in B2B, like B2B high-end SaaS, like high-ticket SaaS, is you interview the thought leaders and the influencers in that space, but also you interview your ideal prospects. And so you want to, one of my favorite books from years ago is called The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes. And one of the things he recommends doing, he's passed away now, but one of the things he wrote about was you make a list of the 100 people that would make the biggest impact on your business. And so those are probably the people you want to interview. So before you start just podcasting, make a list of who those individuals are, and then come up with a strategic plan to have them as a guest on your show. And that's one of the best ways you can grow it. So you want to think ahead.
Now, have you taken these podcasts and have you, I've heard a lot of people have written books based on their podcasts or articles that they've written. Can you tell us your journey in that area?
To me, I haven't written any books from that. I mean, it's definitely a model. I'm writing other books on how to generate income from interviews, how to market and monetize a podcast, topics like that. But yes, a very viable model is to interview all of the guests you have, turn each of those into a chapter in the book, and then what you can do is actually co-market the book with them because they all have a piece of the pie. So instead of you just promoting the book by yourself, now you have 12 other people that are promoting it. It's a very easy way to grow, and it's highly recommended.
Tell me more about that. I mean, you're talking about some of the process involved.
Yeah. So in terms of writing a book?
Yeah. Well, yeah, in that vein, yes.
Yeah. So what you could do is, again, make a list of the people that make the biggest impact on your business.
Right.
Have them on your show, interview them. Then the first thing you should do before that, and something I'm very passionate about, is co-marketing.
Right.
So one of the biggest mistakes people make, or podcasters make, is they have guests on their show, and then they try to get them to promote it, and then unfortunately they do nothing. So one of the pieces of software I built is software that really removes the friction from a guest promoting the show. So we give them all the marketing assets, and also, like, here's a crazy idea, notify the guest when it's going live. I've been on literally hundreds of shows, and a lot of times you don't know when it's live until it's that day. And they're like, hey, you're live, and then they expect you to fit it into your promotion calendar, and it's just very difficult. So planning ahead in that vein is very helpful. So that way, the audience of your guest is already seated of who you are and what you're doing. So there's kind of a sequence to it. So you have them on the show. Best practice is market before they're even on the show. Like for me today, I'll probably take a selfie of us after this, say, hey, I was just on this amazing show. You should check out Bill's show. And then you have, so in other words, think what's happening before. How can you market during even? Some shows are live, or it's just a matter of taking the selfie and posting it right to LinkedIn or a LinkedIn Live. There's lots of models to it. And then after, making sure it's co-marketed. But then after all that, because their audience is already familiar with you, you can now turn it into a book. You can do, I've done giveaways before. So you could aggregate different software. If you have software founders you're interviewing, you could have them all do promotions for the software in a joint venture. You could do a joint webinar. There's so many things you can do it. And people, unfortunately, think very transactionally. They think about the one interview, and they forget there's a whole lot of opportunity on the back end because we've already established that relationship. Like, why invest all this time, effort, and money in building a relationship and having an amazing interview and then do nothing with it? And so those are the kinds of things I help people.
We had in one of our episodes earlier in the season a book publisher, and one of the things that she caught my attention with was that after you've written the book, she said, if you send a business card or a brochure to someone, they'll probably throw it away. But if you know what some of their issues are that's addressed in a book that you authored, send them the book with that note. And one, they'll keep the book, and it'll position you as a subject matter expert. Is there a corollary with podcasting where, you've gone after a client relationship and said, oh, by the way, knowing what your issue is, here's a podcast that I did that addresses that. Have you ever tried that in terms of utilizing your podcast?
Yeah, that's a great idea. You can definitely do that. Even more effective than that is just basically interview strategy. So from my experience, you can get to basically almost anyone at any position. by positioning this as a PR opportunity because
bring them on your podcast.
Yeah, because a lot of times people will do cold outreach, meaning a message on LinkedIn or email, cold calls, etc. Those are very difficult nowadays. Maybe 20 years ago it was good. Today it's difficult. But from my experience, you can get practically anyone on a show by positioning it as a PR opportunity. Hey, would you like to be a guest on the show? That's the most effective way you can use a podcast. But then
that's a great idea.
Yeah, but then after that, you can, a book works. There's lots of models, but the podcasting, in my opinion, granted, I'm probably biased, is probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I have sold into enterprise accounts, and I've never thought about doing that. That's a great idea, to invite them and it improves not only their personal brand, but the company that they work for.
And then what you do is you take that, again, the marketing assets can be shared with that individual afterwards. And what's really nice about that is they tend to know other people at the same level in other companies.
And they share it.
And also from an internal marketing perspective, they'll share it with their peers. Because executives should be thinking about building their personal brand as well. Because I don't remember the stat now, but the average tenure of a CMO, for instance, is 6 months, a year or something? And so they should be thinking about their next job.
Yes.
What better way to position yourself for that than by doing your own personal branding? Big podcast interviews are a big part of that.
Do you have a specific success story about doing just that that you can share with the audience of the impact that strategy has had?
For guesting or for which?
For guesting.
I mean, just for myself, that's been one of the biggest growth drivers for my SaaS. Because I know, so what I'll do is I'll go on shows or have someone on my show. In my case, I'm not trying to monetize the guest or the host.
Right.
Because I rather partner with them.
Right.
So I don't use it because I have a low ticket offer.
Right.
So if you're selling something 5, 10, 20 grand a year or more, then you might want to interview your ideal prospect. Mm-hmm. For me, because my software is lower ticket, it's like $99, $149 a month. Our strategy is to interview joint venture partners, build a relationship, and then they'll promote it to their list, the software, usually to a webinar or like a 3-day challenge. And then that's how I can grow. So it's a partnership strategy as opposed to a direct monetization strategy.
And that's Castosity?
Yeah, Castosity is almost like a holding company.
Right.
Within Castosity, there's kind of 2 subdivisions. One is for people that want to be guests on podcasts. Mm-hmm. The other one is for people that want to start their own podcast and market and monetize that podcast.
So can you highlight some of the key benefits to podcasters and marketers in a little more detail, step by step?
Yeah, so either on both sides of it, you're basically growing your visibility.
Right.
You're building your authority. If you know what you're doing, you can generate income from those interviews. Mm-hmm. You can build your email lists. You can create content. So it's highly leverageable. So like any entrepreneur, you should be thinking about, how do I create leverage? So how do I do one thing and turn it into 20? Podcasting is very powerful because you can take this video podcast, turn it into audio only, which can then be distributed to not small names, Apple. Google used to do Google podcasting, not really doing it now, but Amazon has Spotify, not bad brands to be associated with. So you can distribute your audio content to those channels. Then you create blog content, which then has SEO benefits. You can do email, you can do social media, you can do short form video clips. It can be shared with your guests, then they're promoting it. So so what I love about podcasting, why I got out of my traditional digital marketing into podcasting specifically, and then SaaS within that, is because there's so much leverage and you're also building relationships at the same time. So it's kind of a no-brainer.
So what kind of common challenges do businesses face when they're trying to adopt these technologies? And, what strategies do you recommend for them overcoming them? I mean, I think that your software probably helps them address that.
Yeah.
What specific strategies?
Well, at macro level, I would say most people don't have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And so what kind of plan? Well, a strategic plan, yes. Like we talked about, like what's your goal? But within that, what's your promotional strategy? Mm-hmm. So is there a specific offer you want to promote?
And you guide them through that.
Correct, yeah. Right. What's their promotional strategy and where do you want them to go from a funnel perspective? So I want to drive sales. Okay, well, how's that going to happen? Are you going to have a one-to-one meeting? Is it going to go to a webinar? Do you have like a lead magnet, like an offer? Like what is that? And then from that, how does your content support that? So you want the guests that you have to support that as opposed to just getting random people. And so that's your content strategy. So that's one on the host side. On the guest side, the biggest challenge I see there, other than not having a plan on how to, monetize this, is a lot of times people don't have their messaging down. So you can have the cure for cancer, but if you can't communicate it, it doesn't go very far. So just look out on TV and you have the scientists and they're pointing at the chart, and it doesn't resonate emotionally, it doesn't really go anywhere. And so the biggest thing you can do is have mastery of your messaging, because that's really what's going to move people to action. If people aren't taking action, you're really not influencing them. It's not going to help them. It's not going to help you.
That's a great point. And so your organization helps them with that messaging?
Yeah. So on the Guestify side,
right,
our software essentially does a few things. One, it's a search engine for searching for every podcast episode based on a keyword or someone's name. It'll give you a list of all the podcasts where they've appeared or that topic's been covered. The second thing it does is it help you with your pitch. To pitch that, a big part of that is your messaging. So within one of the first steps you should do is build what's called a one sheet or a media kit. And so we use AI to help you come up with the content for the media kit. So I've been marketing 25 years, but even me, I was like, how do I write my bio? It's kind of weird to talk about myself. My podcast intro, what topics, what questions I'm going to handle. All that can be done through frameworks. Like I mentioned earlier, the frameworks now are prompts, but you can use AI to help people brainstorm what those ideas might be.
Sounds like a great service. Just a couple more questions. Because Thrive is all about growing companies and exiting them. Tell me about what your plans are as an entrepreneur in the SaaS field to grow your company toward an exit.
Yeah. So my goal is to exit within 5 years for $100 million. And right now we're building both sides of the chair. So, right? So you're the host, I'm the guest. I have software for guests, I have software for hosts. At some point, we'll aggregate that into a marketplace, because if you're smart and you're building a SaaS company, you need to have a moat. And so one of my employees years ago, I learned a lot from him. He wasn't even really like an employee. He was an employee, but he was kind of like a mentor in a sense. So if you ever saw the movie, I forget the name of it now. The one with Brad Pitt, where they're selling to the Yankees.
Moneyball?
Moneyball, right. He created that software.
Right.
And so, amazing idea. Unfortunately, the software wasn't, it could have been replicated. It wasn't proprietary. So the secret isn't the software, it's the data. And it's also the community. And it's also marketplaces. So from the beginning, again, the vision where you want to go, I always thought, okay, how do I build a moat around this? And to me, it's the community you have, the connections between people like in a marketplace, and also any kind of proprietary data you can add upon it. Because you can't just rely on the software, especially with AI. Nowadays, you can tell AI to write the software. It's done in a couple days. And so that's kind of where I'm building to go to, is to kind of take almost like a holding company, Castosity, build these kind of sub-brands, and then build connections between them so it's a solid moat. So then it actually has higher value.
Terrific. So, as technology continues to evolve and AI is rapidly expanding, come back a year from now and we probably won't even recognize what it could have been. What trends do you predict will shape the future of marketing? How can businesses stay ahead of the curve? How are you staying ahead of the curve and effectively leverage the advancements to drive future growth?
Yeah, so from an AI perspective, like I said, I'm playing in two ponds basically. I have the influence pond, which podcast is a major driver of that, and also AI. So for me, what I did was I created an AI podcast, of course, called AI Tools and Trends. That's connected to a directory/marketplace. And what I'm doing is I'm actually interviewing founders of AI companies. So what better way to stay ahead of the curve than interviewing people that are creating? So what they say, the best way to predict the future is to create the future. Yeah. So I'd rather just talk to the people that are creating the future as opposed to reading it. But of course I do read. Right. I also do quite a few AI interviews, and also participate in a lot of masterminds and like summits and things of that nature. So I'm always trying to stay ahead of it. And that's how I'm doing it.
Great. Well, I appreciate your time, and thank you for tuning in today to today's episode of the Thrive Podcast. I hope the discussion with Tony was insightful, practical, and applicable to your entrepreneurial journey. If you found value in today's conversation, please like, comment, subscribe, and share this episode with your fellow entrepreneurs. Your support enables us to continue bringing valuable content to the community. And until next time, keep thriving. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you very much. Pleasure being here.
Great to have you.